Hey, welcome back, guys. Today we are taking a look at the 1920s. We're going to continue that conversation, but we're doing it through the lens of things like immigration and the Red Scare. We're going to learn what that is and take a look at a very important court case called the Sacco and Vanzetti case. And so we're going to go ahead and jump right in. What we're going to see is that America really is the land of opportunity for a lot of people. Does that mean equal opportunity? Does that mean that it's, that everybody's going to be successful? No. But for many, many, many people, this is really seen as a place where land is available, where jobs are available, where the economy is doing well. This is the place where you can get your new start. And so what that means is that if you have that reputation, you're going to have a lot of immigrants come to your country because they are, by definition, looking for a new start. They're looking for fresh opportunity and a chance at prosperity. So they're going to flood into our ports. Now, we are still primarily a country of Protestants. We're a country that has seen a lot of immigration, but it's been from Western Europe, places that we're very familiar with: Germany, France, Great Britain, Ireland. And now all of a sudden what we're going to see is the new immigrant, which I've addressed in other videos as well, but the new immigrant are coming from Eastern Europe. And there's a huge cultural divide that we don't fully understand, we don't get, and therefore we don't really accept immigrants from Eastern Europe as readily. They don't speak English, so there's not only a cultural divide, but there's also a language barrier. And they are Catholics, many of them, or Jewish or Orthodox. And because of that, and because of the fact that we're primarily Protestant, now there's also a religious divide. And so all of those differences are going to serve to kind of create some tensions between us and this new immigrant. Now, this flood of immigrants is going to result in a wave of now nativist feelings or anti-immigration feelings. Not right, not good, but that's the kind of the way it is, right? There's competition for jobs. There's fear that they're bringing in too much poverty, that they're not assimilating quickly enough. There's all sorts of different fears that go along with that. Some may be legitimate, others considerably less so. But we feel like we are drowning in this wave of immigrants. Well, what we'll see is that Congress begins to react to this because, again, it's a topic that many voters care about. And so they're going to begin to pass legislation to deal with what many Americans view as a problem. And so the immigration issues are going to be dealt with using the Emergency Quota Act. Now, this is a law that Congress is going to pass about immigration, and it really favors Western European immigration, places where we've already kind of made our peace with the Irish and the British and the Germans and the French. We're okay with that kind of stuff. But it also sets quotas. It really limits the number of immigrants that can come here, and it limits it to that nation's current population within this country, 3% of that. So as an example, let's take Italy, right? How many of our Italians have immigrated here? We will take 3% of the Italian-American population each year, right, annually. But it's based on the 1910 census. And so that's really very restrictive. That's not just a gates wide open type of policy, very, very restrictive. Now, they chose 1910 because there was a lot of immigration. They could have chosen 1920, right? But that would have meant higher populations, and therefore 3% of a much larger number results in more immigrants, and they're trying to stem the flow. So they choose a time before the Italian immigrants have maybe completely flooded in and overwhelmed us. So that's kind of what this thing is, right? It's a way to kind of restrict the flow of immigration. Now, it's going to be strengthened in 1924 with a new Immigration Act. And that Immigration Act lowers the percentage from 3% to only 2%. And in addition to that, it completely excludes immigrants from Asia. So the Japanese, the Chinese, the Koreans that may be coming here for a better life, for a shot at prosperity, no more, not allowed in. We're not deporting the ones that already exist here, but we're not going to allow any new Asian populations in. So that nativist feeling is really going to be strengthened in the post-World War I era by fears of spreading communism. right? We see that Russia has already fallen. And to us, this idea of communism is so anti-capitalism, anti-democracy, anti-freedom that we really fear it like a disease. It's a contagion that has to be contained. And so we don't want to allow a lot of Eastern Europeans who we feel have already been tainted by the ideas of Karl Marx, tainted by communism, and already exposed to those socialist ideas. So it's really kind of aimed in many ways at that. Oh, there we go. Now, this is Attorney General Mitchell Palmer. And Mitchell Palmer is going to really see himself as kind of a defender of American virtue and a defender of American government. He's going to take a lot of direct action against the immigrant community. If you are communist, if you are a labor leader, if you are an anarchist or a socialist, there are different groups that he really starts to act against. He sees them as dangerous, and he does not want to allow those groups to get a foothold in the country. So what he's going to do is he's going to begin to execute a lot of raids, warrantless searches. He's going to round up and jail people without cause, and even deport people that he sees as a threat. Now, obviously, this is not something that is legal. You can't jail people without cause. You can't search people's homes without warrants. And yet, the nativist, anti-immigrant feelings are so strong that many, if not most Americans, really are willing to turn a blind eye to that because it meets their political goals. It meets their political agendas. They don't mind if you take the rights or violate the civil rights of groups that they fear or hate. And that's what we're seeing happen there. To that end, by the way, I want to zoom in on this newspaper real quick because this is a headline about what we call the Palmer raids. The Reds, that's another term for communist, Reds raided in scores of cities. 2,600 arrests, 700 in New York. Deportation hearings begin today. So we're going to begin to send these people back. Again, we're targeting people, and I'm as patriotic and pro-democracy as you can get, but we don't really allow within our Constitution for you to target people just because they have a minority opinion or a different view. I can't stand the idea of communism or socialism, and yet our First Amendment also guarantees the right of association. That's your right to associate with whoever you want and believe whatever you want, politically or otherwise. So ultimately, this is really kind of a dangerous road that we're going to go down, but a lot of people turn a blind eye to it. Now, to that end, I've got to introduce Sacco and Vanzetti. These are two Italian anarchists. And they already have two strikes against them because they're Italian, and that's part of that new immigrant class that we don't like. And they're anarchists, and that's a group of people that we consider dangerous. They don't like the American-style democracy. So when there is a murder committed in their neighborhood, they are a couple of guys who are going to be easy targets. Now, were they in the area? Yes. There's a lot of different evidence, but a lot of it conflicts. They're going to be arrested with very little hard evidence because they make convenient scapegoats. It's easy to hate these guys, right? They're part of that Italian immigrant class. They're part of that minority political viewpoint group. So they're really made scapegoats. Now, there is some evidence that they were in the area, but there's also conflicting evidence. In fact, while one of them was found with a gun, it wasn't the same caliber as the gun that committed the murder. And yet that's kind of touted as proof. So a lot of the evidence really strongly suggests that these guys are innocent, but that doesn't matter. They are railroaded through the court system without a lot of time to mount a defense. The court and really the judge seems certainly very biased against them, and they are very quickly going to be found guilty and sentenced to be executed. So there are those that look at this and really protest against it. They wanted justice for Sacco and Vanzetti. And I think it's pretty clear that real justice was not done here. But that speaks to the time, right? The people who protest on their behalf primarily were other immigrants or other socialists, anarchists, communists, those groups that were being targeted by the Palmer raids. And so they saw this as protecting their rights. A lot of other Americans were willing to accept a lack of proof, a lack of hard evidence, because they were already biased against these men as defendants. So not the brightest point in American history. I love the 1920s because with the glitz and glamour of Hollywood and the proliferation of radio and the incredible stuff that we see with the Harlem Renaissance and the Jazz Age, it's really this fascinating time. But I think it's made all the more fascinating when you look at it without the romanticized version, right? And we see that there are racial tensions, there are immigration issues, there are constitutional questions being asked, and violations being done. All of this within the same decade makes it a very rich and interesting topic for study. So guys, I hope that you learned something. Be sure that you like the video and subscribe. I'd love to get more content to you. But thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time.